All right, man, peace. So for whatever reason, the mainstream liberal sports media decided that Dak Prescott's assessment and his perspective on the so-called national anthem protest taking place in the NFL was controversial. We know why that is, because they already knew that they were going to place him in a precarious situation, because supposedly every so-called black man is supposed to say that he's going to get down on one knee for Colin Kaepernick, when in reality, there are many so-called black men who understand that the NFL protests are futile, they're short-sighted, and they're not based in any form of rationale or logic or reason. I've stated this since the inception of my channel, and I say this over and over again. Behind every so-called liberal black is a liberal Caucasian. And the liberal sports media, which is basically what the mainstream sports media is always going to try to embarrass any so-called black man that does not think how they want him to think in the way that they want him to think. And that currently is what's going on with Mr. Dak Prescott. But strangely enough, Ice Cube, the famous rapper, actor, and producer, has come to the forefront and stated that he sides with Dak Prescott. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Jerry Jones is going to bat for his quarterback, praising Dak Prescott for his support of standing for the national anthem. And we've got the video. Welcome to TMZ Sports. I've been here with Van and Michael J. Babcock.
What's up?
And we know exactly how they're going to make this look. They're going to make it look like Dak Prescott is the good boy, like he's the quote-unquote house Negro on the plantation, because that's normally what liberal blacks do, to try to shame other so-called black men into thinking how they want them to think, when in reality it's normally the liberal blacks that are the good boys. It's normally the liberal blacks who repeat and regurgitate many of the ideologies and philosophies of their liberal Caucasian overlords, i.e. feminism, i.e. globalism, i.e. homosexual rights, i.e. transgender rights, things of that nature.
All right, Dak Prescott was getting a lot of crap for what he said in support of Jerry Jones last week when it came to the national.
Well, actually, Dak Prescott did not say anything in support of Jerry Jones. Dak Prescott gave his perspective on the situation. But once again, if you're a so-called black man and you decide that you're not going to co-sign the alleged protest against quote-unquote police brutality, supposedly it's because you're being puppeted by a white man behind the scenes. Once again, it's normally the liberal blacks that are being puppeted by Caucasians behind the scenes.
The national anthem. Remember, Jerry said that Cowboys should not take a knee. They should stand for the national anthem.
Toe the line.
Yeah, and then Dak Prescott came out and said this to...
The reason why Jerry Jones stated that is because he's in direct conversation with Donald Trump. And I've been saying this for the longest time. Donald Trump understands how to communicate with businessmen. What he told Jerry Jones is that if you don't communicate publicly that you're going to have your players toe the line and stand for the national anthem, I'm going to have the IRS investigate all your businesses. I'm going to have the IRS make sure that they come down with the hardest and highest tax levies that they can muster for the NFL.
To support Jerry Jones. Take a look.
I never protest during the anthem, and I don't think that's the time or the venue to do so. The game of football has always brought me such a peace, and I think it does the same for a lot of people. A lot of people playing the game, a lot of people watching the game, a lot of people that have any impact of the game. So when you bring such a controversy to the stadium, to the field, to the game, it takes away. It takes away from that. It takes away from the joy and to the love that football brings a lot of people.
So there was a lot.
In other words, in Dak Prescott's view, and I agree with him, the NFL and other professional sports leagues really should not be the venue or the place for protests against critical and serious societal issues like racism, etc. Now, you have people on television like Shannon Sharpe who make good points. They'll say, well, if the NFL is not the place to talk about racial inequality, then why is it okay to talk about breast cancer and domestic violence, things of that nature on television? Because it's more lucrative for the NFL to speak about those topics on TV. So if the so-called black man can find a way to make racial disparities more lucrative for the NFL, then yes, they would consider making it a talking point on their television program. Once again, brothers, and a lot of people are not going to like this, this society that we live in is a commercial society. And if you cannot understand that, you're going to be more and more frustrated in regards to your inability to make your arguments valid to those that you want to make your arguments valid towards. And I say that for liberal or so-called woke blacks out there who are so concerned about how much attention they get from the Caucasian. Right now, we're living in the age of communication. We have social media, we have smartphones, we have the internet. All of these things allow you to get your grievances out. For the so-called black men especially, Our predicament is different from any other predicament. You cannot compare racism to breast cancer because that's a physical health issue. You can't even compare racism to the homosexual, transgender, or feminist movements. Why is that? Because those other movements are consistent with the ideologies of Luciferianism, and that's why I constantly speak about Luciferianism on this channel. Because hopefully it will allow the so-called black man to see what's going on in this society from a more three-dimensional perspective so that he can take the emotionality out of it. Your situation, your station in this society is totally disparate from everybody else's. So you cannot compare the parameters of your situation with anybody else. And once we figure out how to properly express ourselves in the appropriate venue, then you'll find that these other demographics are going to be far more receptive to what you have to say. That's for those of you brothers out there that are so concerned with what other people think. But to say that the NFL is going to have a racism awareness week, that's not going to happen. Why is that? Because once again, their main constituency, their main fan base are conservative Caucasians from middle America who don't give a shit about how a so-called black man feels. Now, people might say, well, conservative Caucasians supposedly don't care too much about homosexuals and transgenders either. Why is the NFL or some of these other entertainment sports leagues concerned with those things as well? That's because behind the scenes, the movers and shakers of this society are venerators of the mother goddess, and they're also pansexuals. That's the bottom line of it. They could care less about the plight of the so-called black man. We have to be concerned about our own plight. And the brothers are truly concerned, especially many of these affluent athletes in the entertainment industry, in the professional sports world. If they're that serious about what's going on in the so-called black community, it starts in the home. And they have the social media platform to say whatever they want to say. You don't have to alienate your fan base with silly gestures before the game, because they are silly and they're demeaning to the so-called black man to get on one knee and bow down and hope that people feel sorry for you.
There was a lot of blowback, especially in Dallas, where one famous street artist actually posted a mural up showing Dak Prescott looking like the dude from Get Out in the Sunken Place.
The Sunken Place being sort of the new metaphor for being not down with the community and down with maybe the other community.
Yeah.
Well, really, the Sunken Place is meant to be a metaphor for not being woke, quote unquote, i.e. not being a liberal black. That's what that's meant to denote. But as we all know, once again, the liberal blacks are usually the most eager to make friends with the Caucasian behind the scenes. They're the ones who are the beneficiaries of liberal Caucasian sponsorships behind the scenes that you don't know about, i.e. Black Lives Matter, i.e. the Martin Luther King Civil Rights Movement. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, basically, it's a shot at his non-blackness, right?
Yeah, to being like, he basically
It's not really a shot at his non-blackness. It's more a shot at his non-wokeness.
called him a Babcock.
Okay, got it, understood. So
Van Lathan is another woke Negro who can dish out a lot of the racial jokes, but he can't take them.
So guys like Ice Cube went out. Ice Cube actually came out in support of Dak Prescott, not for the standing of the anthem part of it, but for the right to say he wants to stand for the anthem. Here's what Ice Cube said specifically about Dak Prescott. Take a look.
Street artists just painted Dak Prescott as Get Out, going up to Lula in the Sunken Place. Is that going too far, man? Yes. You think he's getting a bad rap for having his own opinion? Yeah. Listen, Patrick, any message to Dak or any of the Cowboys? Do what you want to do, man.
Yeah.
I agree with that, sir. Spike Lee said, do what you want to do, fuck everybody. Hey, that basically wraps it up in a nutshell. Once again, though, when you examine Ice Cube, and I'll probably do a video on him and NWA at a later date. Ice Cube and his wife normally appear in all black. Why is that? Because they're Saturnians. And NWA was a Saturnian group. They venerate Saturn. They venerate Baal.
Yeah, do what you want to do, bleep everybody else. And he said that it was BS that people are giving Dak a hard time for saying what he said. So Jerry Jones was in Los Angeles. You know, the Cowboys practice in Oxnard, which is not too far away. And Jerry went to Mr. Chow in Beverly Hills to get some dinner. On the way out, we asked...
He went to Mr. Chow to get some dinner and probably some hoes, too.
Asked him about
Allegedly.
The blowback that Dak has been getting, the criticism, and also the support from Ice Cube. So here's Jerry Jones weighing in on all of that. Take a look.
Hey, Jerry, do you think Dak is going to get as much slack as he did for supporting
proud of him the way he leads the team. They're not letting it mess with their practice.
Hey, what do you think of someone like Ice Cube, who owns a league, supporting Dak? He came out and said, you know, Dak is doing the right thing by voicing his opinion.
I love Ice Cube. I love a whole bunch of Ice Cubes and my margaritas. That's what you're talking about, right?
You like Ice Cube?
Yes.
All right, so what do you make of this? I mean, Jerry Jones obviously proud of Dak Prescott for backing up the opinion that he kind of put out there to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Dak Prescott put his opinion out there. Dak Prescott made it known how he felt. I feel like people are allowed to respond to that. The people are allowed to say what they think about Dak Prescott now that he's put his opinion out there. But
what I'll say about Dak Prescott is once he makes a statement like that, he can't be too sensitive, and he does not come off as a sensitive type. So I'm sure that he can take it. I'm sure that he has not had too difficult a time dealing with it. At the end of the day, if you're somebody who truly makes strong assertions and is a three-dimensional thinker, you certainly cannot get caught down that Twitter or that Instagram or Facebook rabbit hole, because you're going to have a lot of idiots on there trying to go back and forth with you in their feelings about nonsense and things that they cannot even comprehend.
But that doesn't mean that he's not entitled to it, that he doesn't have a right to it. People just feel how they want to feel too.
Also, but Jerry's not helping Dak out any by saying, oh, he's doing a great job. This is only going to make things worse for Dak Prescott now, because it just...
Well, it'll make things worse for Dak Prescott on the internet, because once again, the woke blacks will try to allege that Jerry Jones is the master and Dak Prescott is the slave.
It's like him and Jerry are just in cahoots with each other. It doesn't sit well.
It is his quarterback, so you'd hope that if Dak supports Jerry, that Jerry would support.
Right, but once again, what makes you think that Dak is supporting Jerry? Maybe Dak is supporting Dak. Maybe Dak actually thinks that. Every time a so-called black man comes against the Colin Kaepernick protest, it's not because he has a white man's hand in his back. Sometimes they just not falling for that lame-ass, overly emotional bullshit that you fell for, Van Lathan.
Support Dak, but This is not going to change anything for anyone who thinks that Dak Prescott is in the sunken place. They probably think now that Jerry's the one that's clicking on the teapot.
And by the way, it's not like Dak's on an island with his opinion here. We just talked to Pac-Man Jones the other day, and he ripped the players who were kneeling and saying that he would never do that because he felt it was a disrespect to the national anthem and the military. I mean, that's how he interprets.
Pac-Man Jones is too busy knocking people out in the airport.
Interprets it. So there are other players who feel the same way that Dak
but you can't minimize his take, his opinion, Van.
I'm not minimizing his opinion.
No, you are. I think
I'm not minimizing his opinion at all. What I'm saying is, when I look for social cues and when I look for ways to behave in society, the guy that I look to is Pac-Man Jones.
I like Pac-Man Jones. Pac-Man Jones defending himself in the airport.
Pac-Man Jones will come up to them TMZ studios and whoop your ass, Van Lathan. You better leave him alone.
I'm not minimizing it at all. I'm just saying I'm glad that Pac-Man Jones was able to kind of stand up and give his opinion.
I was so happy to see Pac-Man knock out that dumbass troll. That's why you leave people alone in life. A lot of these dudes, they see somebody from television and all of a sudden they want to try to start something stupid. Let people live their life and you live yours.
His opinion on this, because I thought, what was Pac-Man Jones thinking about this entire thing? And now I know. And now you know. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to see what the staff here at First Take had to say about this entire Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones situation.
All right, time to keep up with the Joneses, guys. When asked by TMZ on Wednesday how he felt about Dak Prescott's stance on the anthem protest, Big Jerry said he was proud of Dak with the way he leads his team.
Did you see the derisive look on Molly Karam's face and also her tone when she stated how proud Jerry Jones was of Dak Prescott? Even she's trying to imply that Jerry Jones has some type of slave master and slave rapport with Dak Prescott.
Team, and how he doesn't let it mess with his practices. Max, I'll start with you here. How did Jerry's comments now make Dak look?
Well, we already know pretty much what you're going to say, Max Kellerman. You're going to state that Jerry Jones is not doing him any favors because supposedly Dak Prescott should be worried about how the public views the rapport or the relationship that he has with the owner of the franchise, his employer, which is pretty much the same dynamic that you see in every major corporation. Let me say this, I've worked in major corporations before whenever the CEO would visit or one of the board of trustees or what have you, you make sure that you were on your P's and Q's. And I'm sure that when Max Kellerman is called into the office by one of the executives at ESPN and he's being evaluated and he wants a raise or an extension to his contract or what have you, he makes sure that he's on his P's and Q's. That's how that goes.
I hate to say it, but he's not doing Dak any favors because Dak has now been co-opted by Jerry Jones. In other words, once Jerry Jones makes his position clear, and this has been my issue from the beginning with Jerry Jones talking in the media about how they're all going to toe the line. Once he does that, how do you know anything about Dak Prescott?
Well, you know something about Dak Prescott because well before Jerry Jones made his proclamation, Dak Prescott was saying the same thing last year. So that means that you're not doing your due diligence, Mr. Max Kellerman, in regards to your research so that you can establish some level of precedent for Dak Prescott and his assertions. But once again, you see it very common on many of these mainstream media reports that anytime a so-called black athlete is divergent from what the 5 or 7% of NFL players are doing in quote-unquote supporting Colin Kaepernick, that it's because the white owners have a hand in their back. And no, maybe they just disagree. And that's okay.
Dak seems sincere to me. I think he has points to make. You know, sometimes someone can be on the opposite end of an issue, and you say, you know what, that's not even a legitimate point. Your points are not legitimate. He makes legitimate points. It's not as though he doesn't. He does about the distraction that is football and how people don't want politics brought into it, and here's the time for everyone to get together and pay tribute to the great things about America. He has legitimate points to make. I just don't know if... I think it's impossible to know not his sincerity, but the way that incentives shape behavior. If the owner of the franchise has that edict that everyone's going to toe the line on that issue, and you are responsible for leading the locker room, the team, the city, Cowboys fans everywhere in one direction, how do we know if really what you actually think and feel and believe absent Jerry Jones's comments and influence?
Well, Max Kellerman, how do we know what you really feel? Because you're also working in a corporation. And as I've already stated, the former CEO of ESPN, John Skipper, he sent out a memo stating that anyone who decided that they were going to go back and forth with Donald Trump on a serious issue pertaining to things that they should not be speaking about could be subject to reprimand. So how do we know that whenever you're talking about Donald Trump or when Stephen A. Smith is talking about Donald Trump, that you're being fully transparent?
So, if anything, I think that Jerry Jones' comments about Dak do him no favors.
Well, let me be more succinct with it. It's making Dak look like a puppet. That's the bottom line.
According to you, sir.
That's not to say he is one. I'm certainly not denigrating Dak Prescott in any way. I'm simply saying that by Jerry Jones opening his mouth and feeling the need to elocute and articulate his thoughts publicly on behalf, in support of Dak Prescott as it pertains to this issue, it looks like Jerry Jones has taken a position. Dak Prescott has sided with Jerry Jones on that position. And
allegedly. But once again, Stephen A. Smith, this narrative is 2 years old. Did you bother to go back and research what Dak Prescott has been stating since the inception of this issue? That being that he did not believe in protesting in the fashion that Colin Kaepernick was protesting?
And Jerry Jones has control of his players. That benefits Jerry Jones to allow.
Sir, the ESPN executives have control of you. That is why when you made that statement to Kerry Champion a couple of years ago in regards to Ray Rice, that many of these women need to be cognizant of not initiating any form of physical altercation with men, and you got suspended for 2 weeks and you came back and apologized, that means what? That ESPN has power over you.
A lot of patrons out there who support the National Football League. It benefits Jerry Jones, particularly to a lot of individuals in the South who have been incredibly supportive of the president. It certainly helps Jerry Jones as it pertains to the president, which is why we didn't hear anything from the president when Jerry Jones was standing for the national anthem wearing a hat and didn't, as quote President Trump suggested, have your hand standing, having your hand on heart. So the bottom line is that those are the kind of things that assist, Jerry Jones, but it doesn't assist Dak Prescott. But again, it goes back to what I said about Dak Prescott in terms of what he should do. You should have a private conversation. You should pull Jerry Jones to the side and say, look, You can feel whatever way you want to, and I respect it, boss. And I'm going to roll along because I happen to believe the same things to some degree. But what I would appreciate you not doing is going all public about how you support me on these issues and, you know, how I'm echoing your sentiments or what have you, because how does that help me when it potentially comes to our locker room, and certainly when it comes to millions of folks out there who look up to me, particularly because I'm the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. There's just a level. I don't think Jerry Jones means any harm by it.
Stephen A. Smith, I have to cut you off, bro, because the amount and level of bullshit that's coming out of your mouth right now is staggering. It's amazing me right now that you believe that Dak Prescott, a third-round draft pick or fourth-round draft pick, wherever he was first picked up by the Dallas Cowboys, would actually have the gall to approach Jerry Jones, especially at the start of a pivotal season like this for him, and be concerned with Jerry Jones making complimentary statements about him to the public. I don't think that Dak Prescott is as fractured mentally as you'd like him to be, or as worried about public perception as you think he is.
I certainly respect the hell out of Dak Prescott, but I think from an optics perspective, it's the kind of thing that you would hope that Jerry Jones would be a bit more sensitive to.
Jerry Jones is pushing 80 years old. When men get that old, they don't give a shit about what people are sensitive to.
And right now, he's not showing that level of sensitivity to Dak, although I don't believe it's intentional.
I just want to add one thing, because I do think Jerry's aware of what he's doing, and I agree with both of you, but I find it so unfortunate, because I think it's okay if Dak doesn't want to participate in the movement. That's his choice. Yes. But when he goes out and then he knocks the anthem, and Big Jerry acts like you won the Super Bowl, it's like, dude, you just got played, and you're right.
I'm sorry, Molly Karam, you said when Dak Prescott goes out and knocks the anthem, or when he knocks the anthem protest? Because he did neither one. All Dak Prescott stated is that it's time to move forward to the next phase of this whole situation, of this whole narrative. That's what he stated, and that's how a man thinks. I have no problem with him expounding on why he believes what he believes. As a matter of fact, it would have lent more credence to the theory of your panel, your liberal panel, that Dak Prescott is being puppeted, if all he would have said was, I'm against the anthem protest, but had not been able to expound on it. The fact that he was able to expound on it tells me that this is something that he's thought about for a very long time. Of course, that's not going to be very palatable for you, because you guys are not going to let a little thing like the truth get in the way of a good story. But at the end of the day, I have no problem with what Dak Prescott stated and why he stated it.
You're right. He looks worse than he did before.
I don't think he looks bad at all.
So completely agree with both of you on that one. But we will leave that subject there, because we got...
But anyway, that's basically it on that. The main thing that Dak Prescott needs to be concerned with, or at least if I were him, what I'd be concerned with, is making sure that I have an exemplary season. Because if he doesn't, it's not going to matter how he looks. And that's why I stated that I'm quite incredulous at the notion from Stephen A. Smith that he would think that Dak Prescott, a third-round draft pick, would take Jerry Jones aside and have the gumption to tell him that even though I agree with you, I'd appreciate if you did not support me in public because it quote-unquote makes me look bad. Jerry Jones would look at him like, son, you better enjoy looking bad. You better enjoy looking anything. Because if you don't play well this season, your ass is out of here. Jerry Jones don't give a shit. Right now, they're looking at the offense and saying everything is built around Zeke anyway. So they feel like Dak is replaceable. At least that's the environment, that's the atmosphere that they're trying to create coming into this season, that Dak is expendable. So the last thing that Dak is concerned with is how he's perceived, or what social media is saying about him in regards to the anthem issue. All that's bullshit. But anyway, peace.